Hi, good morning, and welcome to Capital Grounds Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Miller. I've got my two co-hosts here, Joe Fisher, Luis Cortez. We're with SITG Capital. We're a real estate investment firm based out of Dallas right now. We've got properties in Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin, and we're looking to expand. We view this as go time. There are a lot of opportunities out there for us. This
Mhm.
morning, we're bringing you some real estate news, some coffee talk. That's my favorite part of the show, and gonna have a nice discussion about some finance and real estate topics this morning. So we're gonna go ahead and yeah, we'll dig in. But gentlemen, how are you this morning?
Doing good, Nick. Thanks for asking. We're doing a little bit better on the weather side down here, Luis, but we were just talking about some crazy weather we had due to it cooling down a bit. So, besides that, things are good, man. Luis, how you doing?
Yeah, we're same here. A lot of fun changes in the fall. Back kids back to
Hmm.
school. But yeah, that storm we had on Sunday night was kind of crazy. Thankfully, our area of town didn't get hit, but other areas of town, man, they devastated. Cars are just destroyed. So we were talking about, which I guess part of our conversation will be insurance and rising costs, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like here we go. So, but yeah, no. Overall, things are good. I'm smack dab in the middle of my semester, so having a lot of fun learning about machine learning
Mm,
and AI
mm,
usage. So,
yeah,
yep, lots of fun going on.
man, that's great.
That sounds interesting. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, speaking of insurance, that we do have an article, Nick, that you found on the rising costs for insurance, particularly in the multifamily sector. There's not a ton of news out there today, but there is some interesting stuff. I saw an article in the Real Deal that I didn't really dig into much, but the title is "Billionaires Bank on Multifamily Market." So a couple of billionaires coming in, probably looking at distress, kind of like we are, saying, "Hey, now's a good time to buy." One thing locally I thought was interesting. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but so the tallest building in Dallas is called the Bank of America building because Bank of America is the primary tenant. They're actually leaving their own building for a brand new building
Wow.
in Uptown.
Hmm.
So
They gonna rename it?
I don't know that they're going to rename it. I'm not sure. That's a good question. They didn't announce anything, but I just thought that was interesting from an office perspective,
Yeah,
kind of what we're seeing, right? You're seeing all of these office spaces that were built in the 70s and 80s are being vacated. And it's not that there's not demand for office, there's maybe just less demand with everybody's not going 5 days a week anymore, right? I mean, you
Right.
may go four, you may go three, but still that's a little more
yeah.
space. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But on the insurance front, Nick, like you were talking about, I think just some high level things is just what the increase has really been. And I saw one sentence in here. It says cost to insure rental apartment buildings rose 14.4% annually on
Hmm.
average in Dallas, 13% in Los Angeles, and 12.6% in Houston. And then on top of that, it's just hard to find insurance in general sometimes. And Luis, I think you were kind of talking about that on the personal side too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really affecting deals and really affecting costs. So
Risk
I think
management.
yeah.
yeah,
It's getting
risk
trickier
management.
these days.
I really feel like with this information, I've kind of been curious to do a little bit of case study, and try to extrapolate some
Mm,
data to figure out what's going on, because I know we've kind of been talking about this, right? Like, just in general, insurance costs going up, and granted, you have inflation. Of course, we have all these issues that we've dealt with coming out of COVID, with supply chain and materials costs. Some of based on contractors that I've talked to, a lot of that's come down.
mhm.
So I kind of want to, it's almost like, can we put the CEOs of the insurance companies in front of Congress and figure out, okay, can we get some understanding, right? Not necessarily to grill them, but can we get some understanding why cost of
Sure.
insurance is having to go up? Do they have some sort of crystal ball and know some catastrophic events coming that we don't know about, right? Because I can understand, your coastal states, at least the
Hmm.
ones that have high probability of having to experience hurricanes. But those are typically a regional situation. And I understand that there's probably, just from a standpoint of law of large numbers and goodwill, that some of that needs to be shared among the entire risk pool. But
Sure.
ultimately, I mean, people choose to live where they live, right? See, it's one of those things
Mhm.
where they know. I mean, I know I grew up on the coast of Texas, and I know that like my
Right.
parents had to have flood and storm.
Mhm.
Because just because of that's the, I mean, they were literally 15 miles inland off the coast. So and they'd have I forgot what floodplain they lived in. I think it was like the 25-year plane or something like that. So I can understand some of those things, but there are other areas where I'm just like, here in Austin, I mean, granted, we do get a crazy storm like we do from time to time, but you
Sure.
figure that's already priced in, that's already baked in. So where is the actuarial math? I mean, us being finance people and relationship people, it's just I guess more intuitive for me to try to wrap my head around why the heck are we seeing such a drastic increase. You can understand 5-10% per year, but I know personally my home insurance literally doubled my
Yeah.
last renewal period, and I can't
I
understand
believe
why.
it.
So
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
think it'd be interesting to dive into that. Go ahead, Nick.
yeah, it's interesting you bring that up in this article, and they've got a source here, Moody's Analytics and the Natural
Mhm.
Centers for Environmental Information. They've got the number of U.S. natural disasters with 1 billion plus in losses on an annual basis, and they've got the last 20 years. And so when you look at like 2003 to 2013, they
Mhm.
average I'm doing a rough average here, but many of them are less than 10. Some of them are 5 or around 5. So I'm going to say maybe on average 7.5, right? And then you look at the following 10 years, so 2013 to today, and they're well over 10. There's 2020, there were 22 natural disasters with 1 billion plus in losses.
Man.
So we're
Yeah.
just, with a number of things, weather is cyclical as a whole, but I'm imagining climate change probably will continue to affect this. But when you've got natural disasters of that magnitude that are increasing in frequency, I can see how that's going to drive costs up a bit. But it certainly would be interesting to get a deeper dive into the numbers and see, have them
yeah.
show their math, right? Show their
Well,
work.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, as you guys know, my wife is a meteorologist, so she's talked about before just even a 1 degree increase in average ocean temperature, how much extra energy that provides for a storm, right?
It's
So I think
massive.
that's interesting because we've seen, water temperatures in Florida this year off the coast were around 100 degrees, which was a record, right? So you have warmer waters that are fueling a lot of that. And Luis, to your point, I think a lot of it is on the coast. A lot of it is hurricanes, flooding, all of those types of things that come with it. But we do in our network have somebody that actually is a meteorologist for an insurance company. So maybe we could get him to
Oh,
come on and talk a little bit about kind of
yeah, that'd be
how
great.
they back into that. Um, but I was just going to say one other interesting part because we have a lot of properties in Houston. So Three Pillars Capital Group says here they were paying 630,474 annually to insure a 544 unit apartment complex in Houston. And then when their insurance expired, their quotes tripled to around 1.8 million. So I think that just illustrates how tough it is, right? To be able to go out and just renew your policy in general. Um, so
Did you read the rest of that? So they tried to get their mortgage lender, Bancorp Bank, to agree to a lower coverage.
mhm,
Instead, the lender forced it to accept a policy costing around
a higher one.
2.3 million a
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
So yeah, it just keeps seems like it just keeps getting worse for a lot of people out there
yeah.
Yeah, that's
in this
Well,
huge.
space.
I just did a quick search on like 5 large insurance companies. So I did Liberty Mutual. They had $612 million of net income. So that's bottom line, right?
Mhm.
Net income. State Farm 588. Now here's interesting. Geico and Allstate were negative. Let me double check.
Interesting.
Let me double check that actually. Yeah, so they had a loss of 1.88 billion.
Mhm.
Again, these are just, I'm not 100% if these are 100% accurate. I'm just doing real quick searches. And Allstate. Allstate was, oh my gosh, man. So it looks like their fiscal year just closed out negative 2.745 billion.
Wow.
So I can kind of understand, at least just big, 30,000 foot view. Not doing a
Yeah.
deep dive here, that some are doing it better than others, and some maybe just because of their risk pool just had enormous hits, which all trickles into the reinsurance. So that's
Mhm.
probably, if I, again, me real quick search and just trying to connect dots that I understand in the risk
Right.
management girl, is it's probably
Yeah.
not so much individual companies, although some of these obviously are taking some huge hits on the chin. But it's probably the reinsurance, and the reinsurance across the board
Mhm.
has had to go up because of the losses of some of these major carriers. So that's my
That makes
very,
sense.
very quick search, quick guess.
Yep.
I think
I'm with you.
it makes sense, and there's
Yeah.
definitely more to it, but that's
Yeah.
a real quick
We'll have
search.
to dive into it a little bit more sometime, and
Yeah,
maybe get somebody on here who does who lives in that world possibly. But
Yeah.
we didn't even get to our coffee talk yet, guys. I think we were just
sorry, I had to
excited
hit
about
mine. Yeah.
the news here, and that's not every day that you're excited about that.
Yeah,
So
we got to geek it.
um,
We went into geek mode on numbers. That's what
yeah,
happened.
Yeah.
we did. I know.
And
That's
hey,
my
before we
fault.
shift gears,
Yeah.
remember, viewers, listeners, if you haven't watched the video where we have Calvin Roberts, he's an insurance
Mhm.
agent out of Michigan. Check that out. It's an interesting conversation if you're interested in the world of insurance. He's got some great stuff on there. But
Yeah, that's a good point, Nick. Well, Nick, I know you're just a little bit under the weather, so tell me what
yeah,
you're drinking today, and if it's getting you where you need to go.
And have you added either whiskey or tequila to it yet?
no, nope, have not done that. Although I wouldn't be able to tell if I had, honestly. But I'm just,
That's an old Mexico remedy, man. Is 2 shots of
is it,
tequila and a 30-minute nap. It fixes everything.
There you go.
there you go. Okay, there you go. Yeah, as you can tell, the top half of my head is kind of like a lead brick right now. So this is one of my favorite coffees. It's just Wide Awake Coffee Company, their breakfast blend, but I can't taste
Mhm.
it, so I can't tell you anything about it today.
Mm.
Um, I've got this is a mug from that I kind of inherited from my wife's grandmother when she passed a few weeks ago. She was a
Mhm.
volunteer at Powell Gardens, which is a local garden here in Ottawa. She volunteered uh, hundreds and hundreds of hours. She volunteered there. I think she's had a
Mm.
plaque that said, 1,500 hour,
Wow.
volunteer. So anyway, it's a great little cup, ceramic. Makes me think of her. So, but
Yeah,
the
good
coffee,
memento.
yeah, yeah. Can't really taste the coffee this morning. So, what are you guys drinking?
Well, I had my usual blend this morning, but I did over the weekend go to there's a little place here. They've got a couple locations called Village Baking Company. So we went there. We were actually secret shoppers this weekend, so that was kind of fun. Got to go
Really? That's
in,
cool.
order a few things, tried a couple different cups of coffee, and they had a subtle fall type of blend that's really good. It was had a little bit of pumpkin, a little bit of cinnamon in it, but was not overpowering when it came to the sweetness or anything like that. I added a little oat milk because um I like the I guess the creaminess of the oat milk when it's in my coffee, and
Huh.
so that's what I had. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Definitely will go back there, and would recommend if you're in the Dallas area going there, maybe getting a jalapeno bacon croissant and a
Ooh,
cup of coffee, or you can get a sweet one if you want. But I was all about that jalapeno bacon croissant. So
Mm.
that's that was my latest kind of adventure into a different cup of coffee there.
I'm hungry
I
now.
like it. Yeah, yeah, me too.
Jalapeno bacon, and I'm just got
Look,
good old white lightning again.
White Lightning.
Good old white lightning.
Wait,
Yeah,
what's
man.
White Knight?
Oh,
What do you
it's just
call
the
White
white,
Lightning again?
the white monster.
The white
It's-
monster,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a zero.
Monster.
Yeah, zero ultra. So, it. I don't know. It's. I'm just a creature of habit. I'm really bad about that. Like I just find stuff I like, and I just kind of I try things. I'll try something once, but
Mhm.
I don't know, man. It's just if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So,
Luis, you and I, man, we talked about that with Yetis way back when, right?
yeah.
If it
I
ain't broke,
just
don't fix it.
it's just tough. Like I'll try the light blue one
Mhm.
every once in a while just to just to mix it up, but it's just too easy. Just like, oh, there's yep, that give me one of those. So, yeah. I mean, I got like 15 different hats, but only one energy drink that I go to a lot.
Yeah.
I ventured into C4 for a while, but man, I was
Mhm.
I think after drinking it for like 2 weeks, I was just having some harsh aftertaste. So I kind of got off of them just to, but they do I will say, like, from a standpoint of energy, like just kind of waking you up, I really like Monster because it's kind of even keel. I mean, if you don't slam it, right, like it takes me about an hour to drink one. But there are some people I know, like they slam it. Like people who slam Red Bulls, I'm like, bro, like your heart's gonna explode one day. I mean, just
Oh, I
it's
know.
like I don't
Yeah.
know how else to think about that. But what was I? Sorry, I was again the C4. I did
Mhm.
notice it. I did probably have it, and maybe it's just in my head, but I did feel a little more focused on it. Same thing with like Ghost. So they do have probably something a little more ingredient where it's not just like a pick me up as much as like it actually kind of helps you, especially for someone like myself as ADD. Helps you zone in a little bit. So, but I don't know. The flavor to me, it's kind of now it's gotten to the point like as long as it helps wake me up a little bit and I like the flavor, I'm going to stick to it. So
Yeah, I gotta call you out a bit.
yeah.
Didn't way back when, didn't you tell us that you didn't drink coffee because you didn't really drink coffee because you were caffeine sensitive?
No. I don't. I'm the bitterness of
Oh, you
coffee.
don't
Oh,
like the
okay.
Yeah,
Mm.
I basically remember I said it's like I have to put like a
Mhm.
bunch of milk and stuff in it, flavor. So it's basically I just turn it into a milkshake. I mean, but I
Mhm.
actually do. The other thing about coffee is like because I run hot, right? I'm just a
Mm.
naturally warm
Yeah.
body person.
Mhm.
Sure.
And when I drink coffee, man, it really warms me up, and I just start sweating. I mean,
I mean, that's fair. It's tough
yeah.
in the
Yeah.
summer sometimes. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
that's
Yeah,
why
especially in Texas
iced
for
coffee
sure.
it's
works. Yeah.
crazy. Even an iced coffee, like an iced latte or something, like something that's
Mhm.
espresso based, it just, man, I don't know. So maybe it is. I am probably a little caffeine sensitive, but that's probably why I take an hour to drink a Monsters because I probably get too jittery if I drink it too fast. So,
Yeah, that's fair. I don't
but
know.
that
On the
coffee,
flip
man,
side
it
of that,
hits. It
though,
hits. Like I told
yeah.
you, the other thing is with coffee is, and that kind of product, it works. It works its wonders with the GI. So,
Yeah, I on the flip side of the heat though, there isn't much better in this world than waking up and it's cold and you go outside with a hot cup of coffee. I mean,
sure.
man,
Yeah.
I lived in Colorado for a little bit and I loved doing that every day. And then now when we go back to visit, man, I love it when we go outside just with your coffee. It's you can see the steam coming off of it. And, whew, yeah,
Man,
that's a good feeling right there.
I was in Wyoming over the weekend and yeah,
Mhm.
that's a
Oh,
treat.
jealous.
That is a
I'm
treat.
jealous. Yeah.
It is, yeah,
Yeah. Were you in
yeah.
Jackson or where were you?
No. So we went to my father-in-law and I went to the Great American Beer Fest on Thursday. We got free tickets to
Mhm.
that, and then Friday and Saturday we were up by Laramie, Wyoming,
Okay.
doing some fishing. So caught some
Nice.
nice trout, and we brought them home, and we grilled them up on Sunday, and it was
Heck
fantastic.
yeah.
It was great.
Sounds like a blast, man.
That's
It
awesome.
was. It
Yeah.
was.
Well, Nick, we should tell these folks how they get to do those types of trips more and back into the numbers on our main topic today,
Yeah.
which
Let's talk
Yeah.
is
about how to build some wealth.
How to make your first million.
how
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make your
Yeah. And
first
I should
million. Yeah.
clarify. We're talking about net worth, right? Net worth,
Net worth. Yeah.
not cash in the bank. Which honestly, I'll be really blunt here. I don't really care about putting $1 million in the bank because if I've
Mhm.
got $1 million in the bank, then that's telling me that I should probably be making some investment decisions, right? That's
Hmm.
too much
Agreed.
cash in the bank. So anyway, but yeah, how to make your first million. Uh,
Mhm.
it's really a lot easier than people people probably think to get, from the beginning. But let's back into the numbers. Luis,
Sure.
I'm glad you did this. You've got some calculations ready to go for us. So
Yeah.
when we look
Yes.
at,
I'm sorry,
go
go
for
ahead.
it. Go for it.
No. Go ahead. You probably leave me in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say when we look at, the returns that are reasonable out there, at
Mhm.
least in the stock market, 7-8% on average is a reasonable amount, but there's a lot of volatility. So
Sure.
let's take something like our income fund where it pays 10%, and
Mm-hmm.
let's back into that. Let's say you graduate from college, like we talked about,
Yeah.
22. What would it take on average 10% return to get to $1 million in
Yeah.
net worth?
So we'll just back into it. I'm gonna have to play with the periods so I'm just doing this annually. So are we starting from zero, or are we saying like, hey, we got a graduation gift?
Let's say you start from zero,
All right,
and
we'll go
then
zero.
let's see where that lands as far as timing goes.
Okay, how much you'd have to put away at 10%?
Mhm.
All right, so zero present value. Let's throw that out. Okay, if we were shooting for, let's just say 35, which is 13 years
Mhm.
away, we would have to put away almost $41,000 a year. That 10%.
At 10%.
That 10%.
Big
That's
big
starting
chunk.
from
Yeah.
zero. That's a
Yeah,
huge chunk.
there's a huge chunk. Yeah.
Okay.
So what if we go out?
That's and then again, this is liquid net worth. This doesn't including your equity in your home or 401k or anything like that you built up. Or I guess it could include your 401k. So
Yeah, what if we go out another 10 years and let's say, 45 is your goal, right? You
okay,
want to work
23
20
periods. Yeah, you want to 23
years.
periods. That's about $1,000 a month, about
Okay.
$12,571. Yep.
Boom.
Yeah, these are just
That's a
time
lot
value
more
money
feasible.
calculators I'm doing. Yep.
Yeah.
Feasible.
Yeah.
And then if you are, let's say invested in our income fund and you turn that income on,
Yep.
right? So you're at $1 million, you're getting 10%.
No, you're getting 100 grand a year. Yeah.
You're getting 100 grand
Yeah,
a
it's
year, right?
$8,300 a month. Yeah.
Right. So, if you plan right, I think a lot of people can live off of that number.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, today's dollars, right? I mean, that's I
Mhm.
think the other conversation, right? And all of us coming from a wealth management, financial advisory background, that's a conversation we want to have with people, right? Is above the consulting, right? You kind of want to. I prefer to work with. Let's start with the end in mind, right? Then you kind of back in to what you have to do today to get to where you want to be, because I think it's a little overwhelming, right? To think about, okay, well, how do I take all these steps to get there? And I think I might have mentioned this on this podcast before. I was at a leadership conference and we had the presenter keynote going, and he was an amazing magician. He uses magic to communicate his message. His name is Ben Jiang. If y'all want to look him up, and anybody who's listening, look him up. He's amazing, great communicator, amazing presenter, and just a really solid dude. And anyway, so he was talking about like your beliefs are such a critical element of who we are, and to demonstrate that, he asked all of us to stand up and partner and go back to back, and for us to change like 33 things about our appearance. And of course, we were all like, well, I can't do that and convince a person, that haven't changed anything. So then he's like, no, just do one thing. And then, we like, some of us loosened our tie or, took our name badge off or whatever. And we turned around and we could figure out what's going on. And the whole point was like, it's just about finding that first step, right? That next best step, and then taking it, and then taking the next step, and eventually you get to where you are. But if you know where the goal is, you know where the target is, then it's a little bit easier to navigate your path to get there, versus trying to figure out how to create the path to get to your goal. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 45, coming up. I mean, that's just saving $1 million of cash money, plus whatever else you've built in equity in your home, or if you've paid off cars or valuables, that have value. So
Well,
that's
and I
45.
think
Let's see if, like, what if, grandma gave us $10,000, when we graduate.
Sure. Like how does that?
Yeah. How does that affect?
How quickly?
Sure.
Okay.
And then and then we should talk about, what if you invested in our growth fund or in an individual project,
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
where you're getting 15 to 20%. I think it's interesting. I mean, Luis, I like your story there, because it is, every journey starts with a step, right?
Mhm.
And building wealth, especially, depending on where you come from, hitting $1 million or whatever your target number is,
Yeah.
can feel really daunting. For a lot of people, if your parents weren't wealthy, or if you didn't come from a family that was educating you on their finances, it's really tough to get somewhere if you have no idea how to start or what to
Absolutely.
do.
And honestly, in almost 20 years of being in this business, or in this, world of money, and really, I grew up in the world of money, as we've talked about. My dad was a financial professional as well. So I was blessed, right? I grew up in that. I
Sure.
understood it. I was able to communicate that at a young age and understand its value, as well as its fundamentals, from a standpoint of just living on this world, right? I would venture to say, man, I would say less than 90% of people have what I would consider core financial competency or literacy,
Agreed.
maybe 85, right? And the 15% that do, or 10 to 50% that do, they usually come from money, right? They usually come from people who are either in the business, have family wealth, and have advisors in place from a young age. And kudos to them. I don't hold anything against them. I don't believe in the whole privilege thing. They're just fortunate, right? I mean, they didn't ask to be born into that family. I mean, you know what I mean? It was just their circumstances. No different than it was people's other circumstances to be born on the flip side of that coin. But where I feel, and not to get political, but I really feel that our school systems, right? Our public school systems, since that's where a majority of us go to school, I'm not too sure if it's why, or I should say, I'm not sure why it's not a mandate to have financial literacy, right, as part of the curriculum. I believe everybody should. I mean, I remember, we took half a year of economics, but that was kind of a joke course. They really didn't teach us anything. And I think
It's
that's
not practical.
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, and economics isn't the same as money, right? So, and I think that's something that should happen, right? I mean, whether it's at the state level or the federal level. I mean, I kind of feel it's intentional, right? I mean, it's like, well, if we teach them about that, then we have less people who are dependent, right? And it should be the other way around. We should be doing, it's a disservice for people to come out and not understand that, because if you think about it generationally, if their parents don't know, or if their grandparents don't know, then you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think that's the magic box that needs to there's one thing to be able to, we talk about, or I've talked to educators, and they talk about, well, education is the path to success. I was like, well, I don't disagree with the fundamental statement, but what is education without understanding how to manage your finances? Because there's a lot of brilliant people out there. I have worked with brilliant physicians who make a lot of money, and no offense, but they were not very good with their finances and financial decisions. So much so that some of them were in debt to the IRS, right? And just because, and it wasn't so much even a bad advice thing, it's just poor household management. And it takes
stuff.
It takes discipline, but I don't think you can even formulate the discipline without the understanding of just the X's and O's of blocking and tackling.
Agreed.
And it comes down to cash flow management, right?
Yeah.
If you don't know how to manage your cash flow, it's hard to save. If you don't know how to manage your cash flow, it's hard not to get in debt. Because once you get in debt and you got the juice flowing, as the mob will say, right? I was like, all right, I can give you 50 grand, but it comes with 20 points, right? It's just a tough hole to get out of, and it's a tough cycle to break without the information, right? And I think that's
you're right.
So sorry, don't mean to get on a soapbox, but it's something I'm very passionate about. I mean, really, as you can
I
tell,
think we all are, man. We're all passionate about that.
And it's just unfortunate. In fact, I've tried to get involved it's been a little inconsistent, but with the schools like FCA program, and that's something I want to bring to the table is not just the faith component, but also like getting them to understand, like, hey, if you're not talking about money with your parents, start asking
Yeah.
questions. You
Yeah,
know, and if
absolutely.
they
I
can't
think
don't
that's
have the
huge.
answers, come talk to me and have them come talk to me. I am happy
Yeah.
to make
Yes.
myself available.
Yeah.
Just to be helpful. So
Yeah. Luis, give me that calculation because I want you to calculate something after it.
okay, gotcha.
So we said
So this was
10
10K.
grand to
Yeah.
start. Yeah.
So 10K
Yep.
takes it from like 12.5 a year to 11.4. So about $1,000 a year difference of so over
Okay.
23 years. So that's you know, a $10,000 head start makes a pretty good difference. About
Yeah.
about
Probably
$100 a month.
$100 a month.
Yeah, about
Yeah.
$100 a month.
Yeah, and we'll get into if you're an equity owner and getting those benefits, right? Like what that looks like. But first, can you do 235,000 at 5% for 30 years? I just want to see what that number is because I'm going to explain
Okay.
why. So home ownership,
235.
235,
Okay.
30 years at 5%.
30
I just want to see
years.
what the number is. Don't tell me yet. But the point I want to get across here is we've talked about this before on the podcast too, and a lot of this comes down to education, right? The number one way to transfer wealth and or gain wealth in this country is through real estate. It just is. That's how it has been for a very long time. So
So that's 235,000.
average, 235, 30 years at 5%. And don't give me the number
what it's
yet.
worth. Don't give you the number yet. Okay.
Yeah. Let me go through this real quick because homes appreciate at on average 3 to 5%. Sure, we've seen some anomalies the last couple of years, but it's
Right.
slightly more than the average for inflation, but not a lot more, right? So if you were to buy a $235,000 home, you got a 30-year mortgage on it at 3% appreciation. So on the low end of that turns into $570K by the time, in theory, you were to pay that off, right? We're not saying you're going to refi
Right.
or anything. So you got $570K in equity basically after those 30 years. But at 4%, it becomes 762,000, right?
Mhm.
So, Luis, what does it become at 5%?
1,015,000, a little over $1 million.
There you go. There's your million right there.
There's your million right there. Just buy a house
and living in it for 30 years and paying off your mortgage.
And it's paid off. Yeah.
Yep.
Now let me play devil's advocate because there's going to be people say, what about all that interest you paid? Well, that's the opportunity cost, and that's where arbitrage comes into place, right? The understanding that, hey, at some point the decelerating loan amount is offset by the appreciating amount. And I can let me go run it. Actually, I got it right here on my phone.
And by no means am I suggesting that's all you should do, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's just important to illustrate the point that you don't need to have huge return numbers to get to where you want to go.
Correct.
You need to have
Right.
consistency, right? And you need to, with buying real estate, one of the positives about it is, and Luis, you touched on this a little bit, but you can use debt effectively, right? And not put yourself in a situation where you're risking a whole bunch.
So,
and I'm also not saying there's anything wrong with renting either, guys. I mean, that you can still become a millionaire by renting your whole life.
I did this really quick.
Yeah.
I did this really quick, and I've got fat thumbs, so I think I got this right though. So just that same loan at 5%. Okay, I know we're not there right now, but I'm just trying to say, hey, you're making 5, it's growing by 5, and you're paying 5. So you would figure, well, I've paid as much as I've made, right? Because that's how the brain would work. It's like, well, if I'm paying 5 and it's going up by 5, I'm really making 0. But the reality is, over that 30 years, because again, as the loan amount goes down, you're paying less and less interest.
Yeah.
So you would have paid 300 at 5% over 30 years. You would have paid $352,500. But you have $1 million asset now. So that's literally a spread of $650,000. That's what people don't understand, and why I get in very spirited debates with people, especially bankers, about a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage is like, you do not know what you're talking about. If you understood time value of money, you would not have the position that you have, but they don't. They just understand what's on the screen. So
yeah,
yes, I called you bankers out. So
to be fair, different loans exist for different reasons, right? Sometimes it's more about the month-to-month cash flow than it is the long-term value, right? But
Yeah. Well, I also think when it, and I know we're getting stuck on this home thing real quick, but I do want to make this point is
yeah,
a lot of people look at their home as their
Mhm.
home, and it should be your home emotionally, right, and everything. But if you can add the identity of the home as also an asset, right, and be able to understand how to use that asset to create wealth, I can tell you most of my net worth is because of plays that I have made on the real estate that I've owned.
Yeah, same.
sure,
And it's
Exactly.
because
sure.
I understood that, oh my gosh, okay, hey, I financed my house at 4% just 3 years ago, but now I can
Yeah.
finance it 2.8.
Right.
Hallelujah. Give me some more and I'll take
Which,
two of them, you know? So
yeah,
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
fair, I think that's a big thing that people need to understand. And in fact, I was helping our neighbors kind of understand how this works is they're going to be first time home buyers here soon, right?
yeah,
So I'm telling them about that, look out for it, right? You're going to want to be able to refi because rates are going to fluctuate.
yeah,
So, but to your point, Luis, on the 5%, if you got a 30-year fixed at 5%, which is not bad, that's
mhm.
a pretty good rate. I mean, especially right now, right? At
Historically,
two,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
That's
competitive.
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
at
Yeah,
235 and you only put 5% down, your monthly payment after taxes and fees, and this is just an estimate, right,
yeah,
is 1657, right? And we have
Yep.
high taxes here in Texas, property
Yep.
taxes, because we don't have an income tax.
Mhm.
So 1657 a month. And for some people, maybe that's a little on the high end, but you think about, to your point, time value money, how that spreads out over time, right? That 1657, even if you leave it there, maybe your insurance costs and taxes go up a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's a really doable payment,
yeah.
especially if you're a dual income household.
Yeah.
And Joe, is that just P&I?
No, that's taxes and fees in that. So
Okay.
the loan is about 1200, and then taxes and fees are another 460-ish a month.
Yeah.
So
Well,
think about that.
I'm sorry, go ahead,
Yeah,
Nick.
hang on here. So that 1200, that's fixed. That's fixed for the whole life of the loan. That's
Mhm.
fixed for the next 30 years, right? And if you compare that to what you would pay in rent, and this is one of the reasons it can make more sense to buy a home than rent. There are obviously arguments on both sides, but that 1200
There
is
are,
fixed
yeah.
for 30 years. If you compare that 1650 to what you would be paying in rent, and then you look at
Mhm.
the amount that that's going to increase, it might be more expensive to buy your home for the first 5 years than it would be to rent. But then you've got 25 years where your housing cost is going to be a smaller and smaller portion of your overall
Mhm.
budget, right? Whereas your rent might continue to increase over those time frames.
Yeah, and most likely will. I mean, that's
Right.
just how it goes, right? And again, a larger percentage of us are renters now than our buyers in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with renting. And in fact, there's a lot of people that make a case, to Nick's point, on the other side of it, that like, hey, it's actually better that you rent. You don't have to deal with home ownership, because then we're not factoring in costs that come up with it, right? Like, you got to replace X, Y, and Z on your home. That
Right.
does
Yeah.
factor into it. So there are other
Right.
things to consider. But if you're purely looking at how do I become a millionaire, that's one pretty, I'll say it with a grain of salt, easy way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I had some friends a couple years ago when the market was just absolutely ridiculous here
Mhm.
in Austin. In fact, they weren't even in Austin; they were in Liberty Hill. They were like, you know what? Shoot, we've been in this house 18 months,
Mhm.
and they sold it for twice what they paid for it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar story on a
And then,
house,
but
right?
because of the timing and everything, they leased it back from the people who bought it for either 6 or 9 months. They were in it for a pretty good while. In
Mhm.
that 6 to 9 months, that's when rates just started going through the roof and the market cooled off.
Wow.
So,
Good for them.
that's a nice bag that the people who bought it are from, but they were in the winning position, right? And so we were
Yeah.
talking, and he said, "Man, what do you think I should do?" It's like, "Man, right now, go rent."
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
you're still going to be paying a pretty significant premium, maybe not as much as 6 or 9 months ago. I said, but rates are now a point and a half
Right.
worse than they were earlier, and I said, and I don't think they're going to go down. I said, so I was thinking I would rent through this interest rate environment that we're going to have for the next year or two, and then kind of feel it out. So, you know, yeah, we could stay on this topic for a while because I really do believe, you know, there is actually enough, a huge shift like we've seen here in Austin because of the ridiculous premiums people were paying. That's hard to predict, but real estate, unlike the stock market, is an incredibly there's still a lot of fundamentals that you can look at with CMAs and current rents and doing discounted cash flows, and you can get real numbers because it's a real asset. It's a physical asset, right? So it's still
great
so
point.
You can kind of make some decisions based on data, based on real math, and that's why I love real estate. And you know, I won't get on my soapbox about the market and how it's Vegas now, but where I'm getting at is that you can make some disciplined decisions. But again, if you don't know how to look at the numbers and you get just tied up with the emotional part of the decision, you can make some unfortunate ones. Right now, I will say, I think a lot of the people were coming in here and just paying stupid money were a lot of Californians. You know, no offense to the Californians that I like.
Well, they had a lot of equity.
Yeah,
right?
because
So
they're selling their
they're
selling their little 1,500 square foot house in Santa Monica for $3 million and coming over here and buying a 4,000 square foot house for $1.5 million, you know? So it's like, oh, that's easy, you know? I was like, oh, it's really only worth $1 million. It was like, oh, that's okay. I'll pay another 500 grand just to get it. But will that ever happen again? Who knows? But I think
I mean, that's one of the things you can't predict, right? And that's why I said, like, let's look at what historically it does, 3 to 5%. I think that's a good way to back into it. But let's talk a little bit about, you know, if you want to be a little bit more aggressive on the investment side. Yeah, like growth. So maybe you're a renter, or, you know, you want to use that to supplement kind of what you're doing outside of it. So let's go on the low end for now. Let's say 15%, because that would be the low end for that.
For how long?
Let's do a similar time frame. So let's say what happens, you know, if you start investing out of 45? College. Yeah, let's do 35 and then 45, and let's see what those numbers
45 at 15%. You got to put away. So we were at what, 40 something, a little over 40. This knocks it down to 29 a year.
Okay. 2,900?
29,000.
29,000?
Yeah. A year.
From if you were starting at what, zero?
If you started at zero. Yeah. Again, if you had grandma or daddy give you a little graduation present, let's just say 10,000, that knocks it down to 27 a year. So it's about
what was the calculation we did earlier where it was about 1,000 a month? What was that? Do you remember?
I think that was the $10,000 gift at I can just run it real quick. Yeah, that was a $10,000 gift at 23 years. So if age 45 at 10% with a $10,000 gift is 11,446 a year. So a little.
Okay. So do that same at 15 though.
Okay.
For 23 years, what does that come out?
That's only $4,700 a year. So about $400 a month.
Okay. So there you go.
With a $10,000 gift. If you didn't have the gift.
Yeah. What is it without that?
6,200 a year.
So I mean, still a heck of a lot better, right?
Yeah. 500 a month.
Let's say you average 20%. Yeah. I mean, that's on the high side, but let's just say, just for illustration purposes.
Okay. Starting from zero to get to $1 million at 20% at age 35, graduating at 22. That's putting away 20 a year. So it more than cuts it in half.
Okay. And then go to 45 and let's see, because since we just did that one.
Yep. You only got to put $3,000 a year away.
Wow.
Boom.
At 20%.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think I'm going to start putting more in the growth fund.
Well, and so something to point out here is that, you know, in real estate, I mean, the wealth can really snowball, you know, because if you look at, so here, I just did a quick calculator. If you put $1,000 a month down for 15 years and you were getting on average 20%, that would be 956,000. I'm
So
sorry,
yeah, you're
that's
almost there.
20% over 15 years. Yeah.
Mhm.
And when you look at some of the projects we've done, like Fisher, well, the podcast we've done recently where we had a 30% return.
Mhm.
If you look at projects like that and you think you can average between 20 and 30%, it just, the wealth
Sure.
can just continue to snowball, especially if you're pushing it into, you're taking the proceeds from one project into another.
Yeah.
It grows quickly.
Yeah. Plus the tax efficiency, because you can
Yeah, that's
1031, and
huge
I
too.
think that's something,
Mhm.
Absolutely.
again, without the knowledge, you don't understand or don't know about it. Right.
Right.
And like how you
Right.
can roll from one project to another. And it's essentially like an IRA from the standpoint of your taxes are deferred. So
Yeah. Forbes has a quote, 90% of millionaires either obtained or maintained their wealth through real estate.
yeah.
So
Yeah. And the
Now,
beautiful
I
I'm
feel like
curious if
that
that
tells you most
includes,
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
if we think about strategy, like from a standpoint of not just, when I say wealth building, I'm talking about like generationally passing on wealth, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That you think about step up in basis, right? And if, let's just say, I put in $1 million, and when I die, into our funds, right? And when I die, it's worth $10 million.
Mhm.
But I've drawn, let's just say, $3 or $4 million of income off of it over my lifespan, and then my kids inherit the $10 million and don't pay a dime of tax on it, and they can start stripping off the income from that. Right.
Right.
That to me is where the play is, and where people need to understand the value, because there's not a lot of other instruments that will allow you to do that. Right. I'm not talking about the step up in basis, but I'm talking about the protecting and locking in and being able to distribute it. I cannot think of one tool right now. If you go run, a time value of money calculation, not even time value of money calculation, but literally because of sequence of returns, that you can draw down on an annuity, a stock, a bond at 10%
Mhm.
and still have money left over when you pass. Right. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the power. And if we think about the other thing that doesn't get talked about enough is compounding, which Warren Buffett is deemed the eighth wonder of the world. Right. The power of compounding. That is also, something I don't think most people truly not understand, but get to participate in. Unfortunately, because most people's largest asset, if it's not their home, is probably their 401k.
Mhm.
And because of the ebbs and flows of the market, and I know I've read plenty of articles, because we try to coach people through this when we were advisor, or when I was an advisor, is it's not timing the market, it is time in the market.
Yeah.
And people still get uneasy when they see their portfolio drop by 10, 15, 20%. And then they miss most of, if not all of the comeback, so
I
again, if
actually
you're
think
listening,
that
please be
that's a
be
good
aware of that.
point,
Yeah.
Luis, because that is one thing that kind of works in real estate's favor, right? Is again the stability, and then
Yeah.
you're not seeing your home price fluctuate daily, so you're not
right.
freaking out if
Yep.
something happens. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, really, honestly, guys, the biggest equation that you could, or biggest number you can put into the equation here is time. You can be
Mhm.
successful with a lot of different strategies, but time is going to be the biggest factor that goes into it. So yeah, well
True.
put, Luis. I agree with you there.
Thanks.
So let's say that you're, one of the things that we're failing to mention in all of this, to invest in our funds for the most part, and to
Mhm.
invest in a lot of these projects, you have to be an accredited investor,
Yeah.
which means you have to either make 250,000 a year between you and your joint partner, or 300,000 a year for the last 2 years if you're an individual, or you have to have $1 million in net worth, excluding the value of your home. So that's a limiting factor. But let's say that you are a young person, in your 30s, let's say you're
Mhm.
35, and maybe you do qualify for those. You're trying to figure out, how could I retire early? I ran a quick calculation here. If you put $60,000 into our growth fund as an example, and got on average a 20% return over the next 20 years. So you put 60,000 in and you leave it alone. You just keep rolling it in,
Mhm.
right? At 20% return over 20 years, that turns into over $2.3 million. So
Wow.
if you
Yeah.
if you're in a position where you've got equity in your home or something of that nature, and you can take that 60,000 and putting it into something that's going to be doing more work for you.
Mhm.
At 35, 2.3, that's 55, 2.3 million at 55. That's a good step. That's a great step
Yeah,
towards
that's
retiring early.
right.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's true, Nick. And you can produce quite a bit of income off of that. I mean, even if you put, like we talked about, put 1 million of that into the income fund, there's 100,000 or roughly 8,300 a month, or, you
Right.
can double that if you want, but hey, invest in some treasuries too, invest in some things in the stock
Sure.
market that pay dividends. There's so many ways that you can do it and diversify yourself, especially if you're able to build to that type of dollar amount, to Nick's point.
Absolutely.
And let's extend that out to 60. Let's say you're 35, you put
Mhm.
60,000 in, you leave it for the next 30 years at 20%. That's 14.25 million, which
Man,
is
there's the time
that's
factor right there, guys. I mean,
oof, another 10
that's
million.
crazy.
20 years takes you from 60 to 2.3 million, and then another 10 years takes you from 2.3 to 14.25. That's huge. And here's the thing, when we run these, sorry, I've got a lot of stuff going on in my head. Uh, that, I don't know if you guys run into this, but when you plug stuff into calculators like these, it can
Mhm.
seem really unrealistic, right? Because the numbers are just pumping out.
Well,
But
yeah, I think
yeah,
that's kind of to Luis's point about compound interest and
right.
most people not understanding it. And I mean, to be frank, like, it's kind of hard to understand because of that.
Yeah, but 20% in the real
Yeah.
estate world uh is not an absurd number. In the traditional stock market,
Mhm.
20% would be a great year, right? To do that on
Yeah,
average.
banner year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not feasible at all. In the real estate world, it is very feasible to do that
Sure.
consistently and with regularity.
Well, I think part of the issue when it comes to investing in general is most people, their easiest accessible conduit to get into the market are mutual funds, right? And whether through their 401k or just in
Mhm.
general, if they go to a Edward Jones or somewhere else, right? Because typically you're not going to be able to participate in a separately managed account and get into managed stocks and bonds unless you have $1 million or more, right? And I mean, if we think about it, I've been in the business since 2004, really. I've been
Mhm.
licensed since 2005, and in that almost 20 years, even if we consider from 99 with the .com bust, then you have the credit crisis and of 07, 08, 09.
Yeah.
Then you have
Mhm.
COVID in 2020. So if you go from 99 to now, that's what, 24-ish years.
Mhm.
If you look at the average rate of return, it hasn't been great. And in fact, depending on what 5 or 10 year segment, if you kind of move the dial, I mean, you can capture some great years, right? If you just isolated, let's just say 2010 to 2019, that 9 year period, because there was so far down from 08, 09, you get a huge lift, right? So if you were only invested in that segment, you did amazing, right? But if you look at the true market of being participatory, let's just say you started working in the late 90s or even the early 2000s, and how much volatility there's been. And that's the other thing is, right, is one thing to
Yeah.
say, okay, this has been the average return for the last 10, 20 years, but did you participate in all of it, or were you moving money, going to cash when things were bad? So that's the hard part. And I think that's the discipline. It's not just about getting your financial house in order and trying to reduce your debt and manage your cash flow. It's also about systematically investing and staying invested.
Staying
Mhm.
That is
invested.
the
Yep.
hardest part. I've even struggled,
Key.
right? Because I've made some individual stock plays based on some fundamentals. I was like, all right, really feel like this might not be the bottom, but I know I'm catching this thing at a huge discount, right? And I'm in it 2 years later, 3 years later. I'm like, God dang it. Like, this thing should have bounced back by now. And then I say, you
Been
know
there.
what? I
Yeah.
gave it 3 years. I'm out. And then literally like 90 days later, this thing freaking takes off. I'm like, so again, if I'd have just stayed put and believed in what I was doing and stayed invested, I would have probably made a ton of money. But instead, I either broke even or lost, right?
Yeah.
So even somebody like me who's got not only the education and the professional background and experience, even I'm guilty of it, right? Because and now
Oh,
it's
of
it's
course.
not a huge, it wasn't a huge position, but it was one of those things where I was trying to speculate a little bit.
Mhm.
Excuse me. And even I can get it wrong, right? So that's why it's so important not just to have a strategy and to execute it, but to stay disciplined in it. But it is okay to go back and revisit your strategy and make adjustments. And I would not say adjustments of like getting completely out, but maybe reallocating or reshifting or
Mhm.
diversifying. So,
Yeah.
so that's kind of my take. And I know I've taken up a lot of time. It's just want to make
No,
sure
I mean,
people
that's,
understand
it's a good
we're here to
point.
help. Yeah, we're here to help.
Yeah,
Whether you're
Figures,
because
yeah.
we're of course we're partial to real estate, right? And we believe that's the best place for the majority of your dollars. But to Luis's point, you should still be investing in other things. You should still be investing in the stock
Absolutely.
market, right? I mean, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. The one of the
absolutely.
oldest sayings in the world, don't
Yep.
do that. So uh, keep
Now,
keep moving along and keep investing in general, and you'll be fine in the end.
and I'll give an easy hack. So if you don't want to pay fees to a brokerage or have
Mhm.
the inefficiency of a mutual fund, just go look what they're investing in. And if whatever your dollars are,
Yeah.
go copy what they did. That's all you got to do. Now with free trades on pretty much every platform, just go do that. But the hard thing is you're going to have to go in and update that. If they've sold out of a position, then you're going to
Yeah,
have
it
to go and
takes
do that.
takes time
It takes
and
time,
Yep.
and
but you
consistency.
can
Yeah.
do it. It takes time,
Mhm.
but you can do it. So sometimes
Yeah.
it is worth paying for that advice.
No, I agree. I agree. Nick, you got any last thoughts for us?
Yeah, Luis, I've been thinking about, I love your comment earlier. You talked about how, don't just view your home as your home, right? But view it as an asset and a part of your
Mhm.
financial wealth building
Yep.
toolbox. I'll tell you personally, I view myself and my finances as a small business, right? Or just a
Yep.
business in general.
Yep.
And debt can be really valuable to a business that's growing, right? As long as it's done uh, at the proper times and you make the right decisions when it comes to debt. And that's how I view our personal finances, because I think debt is
Mhm.
an excellent way to help scale your business, right?
Yep.
Whether that's what I'm doing, through my job, or whether that's looking to make additional investments and build my worth. But debt can be a great tool. You just can't
Absolutely.
let
Yeah.
yourself
Can be.
drown in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Debt is a beautiful tool. It's when you abuse it and you
Mhm.
Yeah.
mismanage it and you're not,
Yup.
but if you don't have the foundation laid, all you're asking for is trouble with debt. But if you got a
Yeah.
great foundation and you got a really good
Yes.
handle on your cash flow, look at every Fortune 500 company. The reason they're able to grow and have the returns that they have to shareholders is because they have debt. They
Yep.
know how to leverage that instrument against
Right.
being able to make more money than that debt costs them. Again, back to
Absolutely.
arbitrage.
They.
So again,
Yeah.
I think that was a beautiful analogy, Nick, of manage your finances, your personal finances, like if it were a business.
Yep.
Because if you do that, you have to make tactical decisions that will
Mhm.
not allow your business to go out of business, right? Which
Yep.
is bankruptcy.
Yep.
And if our government would do that, we would probably be in a better place too. Manage our government like if it was a business, not an unending revolving door of being able to tax and spend. So you can obviously tell what side of the fence I'm on, but I'm in the party of common sense. That's what I'm in. And so I think that we've covered a lot today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love all of our passion towards this, because you can tell, not only are we competent, but we truly want to help people, right? And I
We
think
do.
that's,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do.
it's not about the money that's in it for us. Hey, we make money and we're not going to apologize for it. Every business that's in business is there to make a profit.
Yep.
But I think the difference in us versus a lot of other companies is we want to get to know you and figure out, and because of our unique backgrounds of being advisors and wealth managers, we can
Mhm.
approach it from that consulting standpoint. It's not just about telling you the story. It's not just about telling you all the good things and even some of the things that we may struggle against. It's really about trying to understand, how does this puzzle piece fit in your picture, right?
Yep.
And being able to help make the other puzzle pieces come to life. And we're uniquely qualified to be able to do that because of our all of our experiences as financial advisors and wealth managers.
Yeah, we are. So to that point, let us know. We will sit down with you, do a Zoom call, whatever you can do, right? And help you work through some of this, give you ideas. That's a big reason why, I'll speak for all of us here, why we got into the financial industry in the first place, was to help educate people. Luis, you came from a background of your father was in the industry, so that probably spurred your interest. But for me, did not have that situation. I had a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding from, my parents and maybe even generations before them on how to manage money well. So I wanted to understand that. And now I want to help people better understand that in their own personal lives. So please reach out to us, send us an email or comment or subscribe, as we always say. That way we can connect with you and help you.
Yeah. And as you've seen in today's episode, we're passionate about this stuff. We as individuals are passionate about building wealth for ourselves. And I think we're beyond hobbyists because we do this professionally, right? But think of us as wealth building hobbyists. And because we're passionate about it, if you're also interested in it, we'll tell you probably more than you asked to know. But we want to help you get there, just like we want to get there. We want to be able to share it with.
Knowledge is
It
power.
is, and like Joe talked about, the first step is figuring out what you don't know. If you know what you don't know, then you can start checking off boxes and solving those problems and learning. So give us a call. We'd love to chat. But gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Great conversation this morning.
Thanks.
Whether our listeners or viewers enjoy this, I always enjoy these calls. So thanks for being here, and we'll look to see you again next week.
Thanks, guys.
All right, fellas.
All
Appreciate
right,
the
gentlemen.
time.
Take care. We'll see
Thank you,
you.
everyone.